The next topic for this chapter is about CSS or Cascading Style Sheet. Let us recall about the MVC pattern that is employed in web design, the pattern of model, view, and control. In this model or in this pattern, CSS plays the role as view because it defines how the content will look like, how the content will be formatted. HTML will contain the structure or the content, but not the formatting. That is why a few of older HTML tags are deprecated as of now. As we saw in the previous section, tag B and tag I for bold and italic are already deprecated because bold and italic is not content but the formatting of the content. So it has to be done using CSS. Whatever formatting we want to do, we do it with CSS. The current version is 4.0, but the currently supported is 3.0. Even with 3.0, the formatting is virtually unlimited. We can set color, background color, font size, drop shadow, 3D rotating, etc. CSS is somehow linked to HTML because CSS is meant to format HTML. So how do we put CSS in HTML? We can put CSS as style attribute because all text in HTML can have style attribute. So for example, this is a P tag paragraph. It can have style attribute. Then we can give the value in string where the string is actually CSS code. In this case, we give the value of style as font size assigned with extra large. So the word my name is here will be printed in extra large font. In the previous slide, we put the CSS as style attribute. But that is not the only way to put CSS. We can also put CSS in the style tag. This will centralize the style or the CSS in one place for the same file. For example, we have this HTML file from here until here. We don't want to define the style of this paragraph, for example, directly in the tag. We want to centralize it in the head of the HTML. We put the style or the CSS in style tag. It has to be in the head of the HTML. So we put style. We can put this optional type attribute for the style tag. So we need some kind of selector or linker between the style and the place where we want to make the style appear. For example, this paragraph, we assign it to the class main title. So in the style definition, we put main title and precede with a dot to tell that this is a class. Later we will tell what is a class. So for the class main title, these are the style that we give. We give this font family type, font width of bold and text align center. So all this styling will be applied to this text in this paragraph. So this is how we put CSS as centralized in one file, not in one specific tag. The third way to do it is to centralize it in a separate file. We can save CSS code in .css file like this, and then we link it to the current HTML using this tag, the link tag. Link tag, we give the attribute of rel stylesheet, and then href is the file where the code of CSS is written. And in that CSS, for example, we want to have a main title class like just now, must be defined in this CSS file. So this is external linking. So because we have external and internal linking of CSS to HTML tags, we need a kind of selector. We need to link which style belongs to which tag. So we need a selector if we put CSS as style tag or separate .css file, because browsers need to be told which style to be applied where. If the style is to be repeated on many tags, we use class selector in the tag, and in CSS it is denoted by a dot. Like just now was main title, we put dot main title in CSS because main title just now was a class. If the style is to be used by only one specific tag, we use ID attribute or selector in the tag. The ID must be unique in HTML file, and in CSS it is denoted with a hash. Example, let's say we have this sample.html and it links its style to style.css, which is a separate file. We have a paragraph in the HTML with ID main title and two link, this link and this link, that we assign to class pop-up link. So to define how pop-up link should look with CSS, we need to define pop-up link class denoted by a dot here in the CSS file like this. So in this case, the pop-up link will have bottom border as dotted line with a size of 1 pixel. And the main title here is an ID. We define the style in the CSS denoted by hash main title, and then followed by the style definition between two curly brackets. With CSS, we can redefine the default rendering of certain text. We can redefine the standard formatting for text using CSS, add style tag or external one. For example, a hyperlink will be formatted as underlined blue colored text. We can redefine this to become dotted blue underline as follows. Instead of putting the class or the ID in the file, we put A without dot or hash. This means all link will be formatted with no underline. Text decoration, none here means remove the underline, no underline. But we put the underline as bottom border, 1 pixel size, dotted. So in this case, we change the rendering of link to become dotted underline in our HTML page. We were talking about generic HTML element in our first section in HTML before this. The two generic tags were div and span. Why do we need this? Because there are many times that web developers need to have special tags for customization that are not provided by the standard. So we can use div and span as generic tags. Then we can customize it using ID or class. For div tag, it is generic tag that is customizable for the kind of element that we want to be rendered, like table or image, which has line break before and after it. On the other hand, span is the generic tag that is customizable for the kind of element that we want to be rendered to follow the text line, like in paragraph tag. Maybe you are wondering why we use the name cascading style sheet. The reason is because the styling will be cascaded or will have additive effect if we put the style in different places. So as mentioned before, CSS can be defined at different locations. If at different location, it defines different formatting parameters for the same class, ID or tag, the effect is additive. That is accumulated, or from there, the word cascading comes. But if the different styles at the different locations are defining the same and clashing formatting, the effective formatting is the one that's given at style attribute, because this is closest to the tag or the element that we want to format. So it has the highest precedence. And the second precedence is the style tag in HTML file will override whatever formatting that we put in CSS files. For example, let's say we have this snippet of HTML file and this one line from style.css. In the .css, we define text style to have font weight bold, and in the HTML file, within the style tag, we have another definition for text style ID, but now we're defining the font style, which is italic, so they are not clashing, they are different property. And in the element that has the ID of text style, which is a paragraph element, we put the style text decoration to be underlined. So in this case, all these properties will be cascaded, and this text will be formatted as bold, italic, and underline. That is why we call it cascading, or having additive effect. Next is the case where the definition of the style or property is clashing. The same ID, text style. In .css, we define the font size to be 18 pixel. Then in the style tag of the HTML, we define the same property to have different size, now 20 pixel. But then in the style attribute that we give to the paragraph tag that is actually having the text style ID, we give font size as 24 pixel. So the one that take precedence, or the one that will override everything, is this value. So this text will be printed as 24 pixel. Let us go through very briefly about the category of the format that CSS can do. For this class, you are expected to learn the vast options of CSS formatting by yourself by Googling the right keyword. So you need enough experience to get the right keyword to Google. So far, we have seen the formatting of text as follows. Italic is under text style, font weight is bold, underline is text decoration, and so on. There are many more other formatting can be found as the following categories. Border, we can set border size, the style. If we want to have 3D style, we can put as inset, outset, etc. We can set the color of the border. We can have the style of the border, either dotted, dash, solid, etc. You can always find this in WT School. Positioning and sizing. You can have static, absolute, or relative, or fixed positioning, location, top, bottom, left, right, size, width, height, and so on. You can also have shading and background or shadowing. You can Google or find it or find them in these portals. More categories: padding and margining. Padding is the gap between the content and the border. Margin is the gap between the border and the outside content. Explore them yourself. With the knowledge that you have about HTML and CSS, and more knowledge that you can explore yourself, you can create your own web page from scratch. However, the best, fastest, and the recommended way to get a very nice looking website is by starting with a template, then edit the content and images. You don't have to edit the CSS. There are thousands of free templates out there. You can find and Google yourself. Examples are this portal.